Standing room only. This should go very quickly once we get our full complement. So, good morning to everybody, and I note the presence of a quorum and now call this business meeting to order. For the information of the members of the committee, Ranking Member Whitehouse and I will deliver our opening statements, as I said, and then when we get sufficient attendance, we'll turn to the vote. After the votes, members who wish to be recognized to speak on the nominations are encouraged to do so. So, I want to thank my colleagues for attending today and to vote on the nominations of Sean McMaster to be the administrator of the FHWA, John Busterud to be the assistant administrator of the EPA, and Adam Telle to be the assistant secretary for the Army for Civil Works. Sean McMaster has more than 10 years of government service working in the U.S. House of Representatives and in federal agencies, including the U.S. Department of Transportation. For the last 5 years, Mr. McMaster has worked for the private sector in two private sector transportation companies. Mr. McMaster's relevant professional background, both in the public and private sectors, make him, I believe, especially well-suited to be the administrator of the Federal Highways Administration. John Busterud practiced environmental law for 31 years and previously served as the regional administrator for the EPA's Pacific Southwest region. Mr. Busterud also served our country with distinction for 23 years in the U.S. Army. Mr. Busterud's exceptional experience has prepared him to lead OLEM and to tackle some of the nation's most pressing environmental challenges. Adam Telle has 2 decades of public service in the United States Senate, including as my clerk on the Homeland Security Subcommittee and Appropriations, and also as a special assistant to the President in the first Trump administration. Mr. Telle has seen firsthand how the Army Corps' response to natural disasters can help communities withstand significant weather events and then recover from them. Mr. Telle's extensive experience and understanding of the issues facing the Army Corps of Engineers making him an excellent choice to lead the Civil Works program. At their recent nomination hearings, we heard the nominees' visions for their respective roles that they have been nominated for, and we learned about their professional experience that have shaped their qualifications for these roles. I'm confident that these nominees will focus their efforts to bringing their respective agencies back to achieving their core missions and faithfully following the laws that Congress has enacted as they carry on their duties. So I urge my colleagues to support these nominees, and with that, I recognize the Ranking Member Whitehouse for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chair Capito. I will vote in favor of Adam Telle to serve as Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works. Over his 20-year career, he's demonstrated admirable commitment to public service. His testimony and his experience securing resources for disaster response and recovery suggest that he appreciates the dire consequences that natural disasters wreak on red and blue states alike. I hope Mr. Telle will carry this lesson forward and ensure that the Corps executes its mission objectively and without political bias. I will also support Sean McMaster to lead the Federal Highways Administration. First off, I appreciate DOT moving expeditiously to obligate funds to hundreds of previously awarded discretionary grants. As I've said, I don't think the grants ever should have been paused or frozen. But on the other hand, the previous administration should also not have left thousands of awarded but unobligated grants. One unresolved item is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program created in our bipartisan infrastructure bill, which remains frozen. DOT has assured my staff that draft guidance for NEVI will be released in 2 weeks. Based on this assurance, I will vote in favor of Mr. McMaster's nomination, but that support in committee will evaporate on the floor if the draft guidance doesn't appear or is unworkable for states. I am trusting at this point. Progress like this is key to Democratic support for a highway bill next year, so I'm doubly happy to see steps going in the right direction. Lastly, on John Busterud, I will vote no. When we heard from these nominees on May 14th, I warned that EPA was a mess. It remains a mess. Administrator Zeldin continues his brazen, polluter-driven assault on clean air, clean water, and a safe climate. He has made it his mission to blockade illegally congressionally authorized and appropriated funding. His performance has utterly belied his promise of being responsive to Congress. The Environmental Protection Agency has become the Polluter Protection Agency and a swamp of corruption. Whatever this individual's personal merits, I cannot support this nominee for an agency so dishonorably in the service of polluting interests. Word about the Republican Reconciliation Bill. Last week, the EPW title was released. Unfortunately, it included a raft of rescissions a repeal of EPA's emission standards for cars and light trucks, a pay-to-play scheme to expedite permitting, and a 10-year suspension of a fee on excess methane emissions, much of it in violation of reconciliation rules. None of this is good, but let me focus on the methane fee. Methane is responsible for up to 30% of the warming we've observed. Fossil fuel production and transport are among the worst sources of methane emissions. Eliminating those methane emissions should be easy. It is true low-hanging fruit. Methane is natural gas. It's product. Producers capturing their leaked methane would have more product to sell. That's why an estimated 50% of methane emissions from oil and gas operations could be captured at zero net cost. Plus, more captured methane means lower prices for gas consumers. Remember that our methane fee only hit companies failing the industry's own leakage standards. Meet your own weak industry standards and you pay nothing. Only if you're among the worst do you pay a fee, based on your own excess emissions. Only the dirtiest companies would pay a fee, and only if they don't hit their own targets. Plus, we had a deal. $1 billion of taxpayer money went to industry to pay for cleaning up its own mess, and industry got a weakened methane fee. So everything about this industry behavior is dishonorable. For what it's worth, the Appalachian Basin is one of the cleanest producing basins in the United States, especially compared to emissions-intensive basins like the Permian. So the methane fee would help cleaner producers like those in West Virginia. Republicans now seek to suspend the fee for 10 years, having already used the CRA to end EPA's rule for collecting the fee. EPA also announced that it will ease enforcement efforts on methane, will suspend compliance deadlines for its methane regulation, and contemplates rescinding it entirely, the true pollute-for-free fossil fuel business model. I will take this moment to warn the industry. Have your fun today. This isn't going away. Satellites can now spot the leakers, so we can let the world know just how dirty and irresponsible your industry is. We can make sure people know how false the industry's declarations have been about methane emissions. We can make sure that the public understands the cost of your methane leakage, the cost in higher insurance premiums, higher grocery prices, higher electric bills, and reduced air quality, for instance, from Canadian wildfires again burning out of control. We can make sure people know you wouldn't even enforce your own weak industry standards. The industry has in recent months shown its true colors, and we will remember. Persistent industry corruption of the political process has brought us to this era of climate consequences. And the Trump administration's crawling servitude to fossil fuel polluters will only worsen those consequences. And as those consequences come to pass, there will also come a reckoning. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Whitehouse. And at this time, I'll ask senators to hold their remarks on the nominees until after the roll call votes. I will now call up presidential nomination 26-31, Sean McMaster of Virginia to be Administrator of the Federal Highway Administration. I move to approve and report the nomination favorably. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. The clerk will call the roll.
No, by proxy.
Ms. Block Rochester.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Bozeman.
Yes.
Mr. Kramer.
Yes.
Mr. Curtis.
Yes.
Mr. Graham.
Yes.
Mr. Houston.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Lummis.
Aye.
Mr. Markey.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Merkley.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Dale. No. Mr. Ricketts.
Aye.
Mr. Sanders.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Schiff.
No, by proxy.
Madam Chairman, the yeas are 12, the nays are 7.
With that, the nominee is favorably reported, and I thank you. I will now call up presidential nomination 55-12, John Busterud of California to be an Assistant Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. I move to approve and report the nomination favorably. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Arthur Brooks.
No, by proxy.
Ms. Blunt Rochester.
No, by proxy.
Mr. Bozeman.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
Aye.
Mr. Curtis.
Aye.
Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Houston.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
No.
Ms. Thomas.
Aye.
Mr. Markey.
No by proxy.
Mr. Merkley.
No by proxy.
Padilla.
No.
Mr. Ricketts.
Aye.
Mr. Sanders.
No by proxy.
Mr. Schiff.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sullivan.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
No.
Mr. Wicker. Madam Chairman.
Aye. The clerk will report the yeas and nays.
Madam Chairman, the yeas are 10 and the nays are 9.
With that, the nominee is favorably reported. I will now call up presidential nomination 55-43, Adam Telle of Mississippi to be an Assistant Secretary of the Army. I move to approve and report the nomination favorably. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Also Brooks.
Aye by proxy.
Ms. Blunt Rochester.
No by proxy.
Mr. Bozeman.
Aye.
Mr. Kramer.
Aye.
Mr. Curtis.
Aye.
Mr. Graham.
Aye.
Mr. Houston.
Aye.
Mr. Kelly.
Aye.
Ms. Thomas.
Aye.
Mr. Markey.
No by proxy.
Mr. Merkley.
No by proxy.
Mr. Padilla. Mr. Ricketts.
Aye.
Mr. Sanders.
No by proxy.
Mr. Schiff.
No by proxy.
Mr. Sullivan.
Aye.
Mr. Whitehouse.
Aye.
Mr. Wicker. Yay.
Is that a cheer or a vote?
Aye. Clerk will report the totals.
Madam Chairman, the yeas are 13 and nays are 6.
Thank you. With that, the nominee is favorably reported, and I will note the presence of a quorum. So I want to thank everybody again, to all of our members for being here, and I will now recognize anybody who wishes to speak on any of the nominees. Yes, Senator Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may have a point of personal privilege, I'd like to introduce my grandson to the committee, who's with me, Jet. Would you stand, Jet? So Jet's 15 years old. He's been with me this week. I've counted. We have had 1,682 energy credits discussions since he landed Monday night. He is now an expert on energy credits. Second, Mr. Ranking Member, I want you to know that I actually do associate myself with much of your comments about methane. Would like to introduce to you a problem that we have in my state with people who have now own wells that are passed down through a number of hands and simply don't have the capital. So even though it may be revenue neutral, they don't have the capital, and we'd love to join you offline in another discussion about how we can work on this issue together.
I would be delighted to have that conversation,
Yeah,
Senator. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and welcome. Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to begin by saying just how proud I am of the bipartisan work that this committee does on a very regular basis. And because of that, I want to explain my no votes on the nominations today. First, I want to discuss the nomination of Mr. Telle to be the head of the Army Corps. I appreciated my opportunity to meet with Mr. Telle before the hearing in my office. It's clear that he is definitely qualified for the role, and I look forward to working with him on many of the Army Corps issues facing California. However, I simply cannot ignore the partisan way in which the Army Corps under this administration has treated California and other states for that matter. I'm deeply disturbed that neither the fiscal year 25 work plan nor the fiscal year 26 proposed budget provides funds to critical flood control projects that have been authorized and supported by Congress, including the Busterud River Flood Risk Management Project. And these authorizations and the support of Congress is clearly on a bipartisan basis, a reflection of the spirit of this committee. Now, the projects being zeroed out by the Trump administration are not just local efforts and local concerns. They protect some of the most high-risk regions for catastrophic flooding in the nation. So I think it's critical that the Army Corps and the administration understand the depth and the significance of my concern about my constituents, how they're being treated when it comes to life-saving flood infrastructure. Next, I want to turn to the nomination of Mr. McMaster. Again, I do not doubt Mr. McMaster's qualifications to lead the Federal Highway Administration, and I hope to have a productive, constructive partnership with him should he be confirmed. He and I had that conversation. But that being said, I cannot in good conscience vote to advance his nomination due to the way in which the Department of Transportation has unlawfully frozen funding for the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program and the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Program in their crusade against zero-emission vehicles. Additionally, Secretary Duffy has launched a sham investigation into the California high-speed rail project as a cover to pull back billions of dollars for critical infrastructure in my state. And finally, I've announced my intent to place a blanket hold on all EPA nominees due to the way in which EPA has abused the Congressional Review Act and overreached its efforts simply to attack California. Now, just a few weeks ago, we saw Senate Republicans overrule the Senate parliamentarian in order to undermine California's Clean Air Authority, authority that's been in place since the beginning of the Clean Air Act decades ago. And it's important for my Republican colleagues, as well as the administration and the EPA, to understand that actions have consequences. And so it's important to understand that I will maintain my holds on EPA nominees until acceptable accommodations are reached for the state of California to be able to protect the health of our own people. And in addition, as ranking member of the Senate Rules Committee, I'm also sending a new oversight letter to Administrator Zeldin. I believe EPA's abuse of the CRA led the Republican majority to go nuclear, all in their effort to attack California's Clean Air Act authority. EPA had never submitted a California waiver to Congress in the 20 years that the CRA has been in effect, under both Democratic administrations and Republican administrations, until now. So that reckless disregard for the law has had major consequences, not just on California's ability to reduce emissions and improve public health, but for how the Senate itself operates. And the Senate deserves to know how and why the Trump EPA changed the agency's long-standing legal position on those waivers. I've asked some important questions, and I'm seeking EPA's related records and communications. And so, Madam Chair, we will see whether Administrator Zeldin will respect Senators' oversight authority and will hold the Trump EPA accountable for their abuse of the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak? Thank you, Senator Padilla. With that, the business meeting has concluded, and we are adjourned.